A severe temperature drop is heading toward Europe, threatening to accelerate gas consumption from already diminishing reserves. As U.S. sanctions on Russian energy approach, the continent's energy resilience faces its greatest test. The statistics are grim and growing worse by the day. Gas prices in Europe have surged by 50% this year alone, driven by heightened demand for heating, reduced wind energy production, and depleted reserves. What was once a manageable challenge has spiraled into a crisis with far-reaching implications. Countries like Hungary, Austria, and Slovakia, heavily reliant on Russian gas, find themselves navigating a labyrinth of geopolitical tensions, economic pressures, and shifting alliances. To make matters worse, U.S. sanctions on Gazprom Bank, the financial linchpin of Russian gas exports, are set to take full effect by December 2024. These sanctions threaten to sever critical gas flows to Europe, leaving nations scrambling for alternatives and testing the limits of their resilience. Europe's reliance on Russian gas once seemed like an unshakable cornerstone of its energy strategy. For decades, the relationship was stable, even during moments of political tension. Russia supplied nearly 40% of Europe's gas, fueling households, industries, and power grids. This interdependence was seen as a pragmatic arrangement, offering Europe access to affordable energy while providing Russia with crucial revenue. Yet beneath this seemingly symbiotic relationship lay the seeds of vulnerability. The cracks began to show in 2014, with Russia's annexation of Crimea. The geopolitical shockwaves of this event reshaped EU-Russia relations, introducing sanctions that targeted Russia's energy sector. These sanctions marked the start of Europe's efforts to diversify its energy sources, but progress was slow. By the time the Russia-Ukraine war erupted in 2022, Europe remained heavily reliant on Russian imports. The conflict transformed energy into a weapon, with both sides wielding supply and demand as tools of pressure and influence. The Nord Stream pipeline, once a symbol of European-Russian cooperation, now lies dormant, a casualty of mutual distrust and economic warfare. Countries that resisted Russia's demand for ruble-based payments faced halted deliveries, forcing the EU to pivot aggressively toward alternative sources. Liquefied natural gas, or LNG, from the United States and Qatar has become a critical lifeline, while investments in renewable energy projects are being fast-tracked. Yet these measures, while promising, have come with high costs, logistical challenges, and significant time lags. Hungary, acutely aware of the risks, stands on particularly shaky ground. As a key transit country for Russian gas flowing through Ukraine, any disruption to this corridor poses a significant threat to its energy security. Hungary's leadership has expressed concern about the stability of supply lines, knowing that even a temporary disruption could leave the country grappling with severe shortages. Slovakia, bound by long-term contracts with Gazprom, is exploring payment workarounds to maintain supply, but these measures are fraught with legal uncertainties and logistical hurdles. Austria, historically dependent on Russian gas, has been hit particularly hard. OMV, its leading energy company, recently ceased payments to Gazprom, escalating arbitration disputes and further destabilizing its energy landscape. Even Turkey, a major distributor of Russian gas via the Turk Stream pipeline, finds itself in a delicate position. Negotiations with the U.S. are underway to secure exemptions that would allow continued transactions with Gazprom Bank. These negotiations are emblematic of the tangled web of sanctions and dependencies that define the current crisis. Meanwhile, European gas futures are nearing their highest levels in a year, reflecting widespread market unease. Countries are exploring alternatives, from rerouting payments through sanctioned Russian banks to securing special licenses from the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control. Yet each proposed solution seems to open a new Pandora's box of complications, revealing the complexity of the energy crisis and its geopolitical ramifications. To fully understand the depth of this crisis, it is essential to examine the historical context of EU-Russia energy relations. These ties began in earnest during the Cold War, when pipelines like the Druzhba and Urengoy-Pomory-Uzhgorod became lifelines for energy trade. By the 1980s, Soviet gas accounted for significant portions of energy consumption in countries like Germany and France, helping to fuel post-war recovery and industrial growth. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s deepened these relationships, with frameworks like the 1994 Partnership and Cooperation Agreement laying the groundwork for expanded trade. By 2005, energy had become the cornerstone of EU-Russia relations, with the EU importing nearly 28% of its total energy needs from Russia. However, this dependency came at a price. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 marked a turning point, leading to sanctions that targeted key sectors of the Russian economy. The EU's efforts to diversify its energy sources gained momentum, but they were often hampered by competing national interests and the sheer scale of the challenge. By the time the Russia-Ukraine war erupted in 2022, Europe found itself in a precarious position, heavily reliant on Russian imports and ill-prepared for the disruptions that followed. Between 2022 and 2024, EU imports of Russian energy plummeted by 86%. This dramatic shift has had far-reaching consequences, not only for energy prices, but also for broader economic stability. Gas prices on European markets, which averaged 19 euros per megawatt hour in 2020, surged to over 300 euros in 2022, before stabilizing somewhat. Yet for millions of Europeans, the impact remains painfully tangible. Utility bills have doubled or even tripled in many countries, forcing governments to introduce subsidies and price caps to mitigate the burden. These measures, however, come at a steep cost, straining national budgets and raising questions about their long-term sustainability. Industries, too, are bearing the brunt of the crisis. Steelmakers, chemical plants, and manufacturers across Europe have reported reduced output as energy costs erode profitability. Germany, Europe's largest economy and industrial heartland, faces a particularly harsh reality. Once a powerhouse of global manufacturing, Germany now finds its industrial base under threat from soaring energy prices and dwindling competitiveness. The economic ripple effects are felt far beyond factory floors, impacting supply chains, export markets, and employment levels. As Europe braces for what meteorologists predict could be its coldest winter in decades, the pressure on energy systems is reaching a breaking point. Germany, France, and Switzerland are all preparing for frigid conditions that will drive up heating demand and test the limits of their energy infrastructures. Storage reserves, hastily refilled during the warmer months, are depleting rapidly, raising fears of rolling blackouts and energy rationing. The logistical challenges of importing LNG add yet another layer of complexity, as the high costs and specialized infrastructure required for LNG distribution create significant bottlenecks. The expiration of the Russia-Ukraine gas transit agreement at the end of 2024 further complicates an already dire situation. This agreement, which facilitated the transit of approximately 40 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually through Ukraine, has been a critical lifeline for Central and Eastern Europe. Its termination could leave countries like Hungary and Slovakia without reliable alternatives, exacerbating the crisis. Ukraine's energy infrastructure, already strained by conflict, may not be able to handle extended disruptions, even if the agreement is renewed. Meanwhile, Russia's pivot to Asia underscores its strategic efforts to reduce dependence on European markets. By strengthening energy ties with China and other Asian countries, Moscow is reshaping the global energy landscape, shifting the balance of power in ways that will reverberate for years to come. For Europe, this pivot highlights the diminishing leverage it holds over Russia, even as the EU accelerates its transition to renewable energy and diversified supply chains. Europe finds itself at a crossroads. Immediate energy needs demand urgent action, including reopening coal plants, delaying the shutdown of nuclear reactors, and fast-tracking investments in LNG infrastructure. Yet these measures are at odds with the EU's long-term sustainability goals, creating a delicate balancing act between short-term survival and long-term resilience. The stakes are enormous, and the decisions made in the coming months will shape Europe's energy landscape for decades to come. The US sanctions on Gazprom Bank and Russia's decision to halt gas exports to Europe have fundamentally reshaped the continent's energy dynamics. The soaring prices, reduced industrial output, and strained household budgets are just the visible effects. Beneath the surface lies a deeper challenge: the urgent need for Europe to build a more resilient and diversified energy system, one capable of withstanding the pressures of a rapidly changing world. As winter looms, Europe's leaders face a moment of reckoning. The coming months will test not just the resilience of its energy systems, but the unity and resolve of its nations. The energy crisis is more than a logistical challenge. It is a defining moment in Europe's history, a test of its ability to adapt, innovate, and secure its future in an increasingly volatile and unpredictable world. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this content insightful or inspiring, please show your support by liking this video, and subscribing to stay updated with our latest releases. Your engagement means the world to us. And hey, why stop here? Check out another video from our channel, just a click away on your screen.